Welcome to Momming as a Millennial, the podcast where we explore the intersection of tradition and modern parenting. Have you ever felt overwhelmed trying to balance being a mom with your professional aspirations, all while dealing with side-eye from your parents who think you're doing it wrong? Me too. I'm your host, Christine Gerizzo, a journalist, blogger, and proud mama of 2 young children. I'm so glad you're here with me. Together, we can navigate the complexities of millennial motherhood and find what resonates with our true, authentic selves. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Momming as a Millennial. We're going to get right into it today. I have an awesome guest. Her name is Alyse Tuccio. Welcome, Alyse.
Thank you. Hi.
I'm so glad you're here. Alyse has been an esthetician for 18 years, and you are a loving dog mom, and I know you live locally, and you did my makeup for my wedding. I did want to point out she did a great job with my wedding makeup, and that was the one and only time I wore fake eyelashes, and I thought I was going to die. But I looked good.
Forgot about that. No.
Good
I
times.
do remember now. I forgot. I did that.
Yeah, no, you did a great job.
Oh,
Never looked better.
oh
So
my gosh.
we were trying to figure out, before I started recording here, how long we've known each other. And the reason that I know Alyse is because she gives me my Brazilian waxes. So we are going to make our producer very uncomfortable during this conversation, so I hope you're ready. But I'm pretty sure it's been like 12 or 13 years since you've been waxing me.
Yep. Mm-hmm. A lot of conversations.
A lot of conversations. So what else can you do while somebody has their head in your crotch other than talk?
Yeah.
So we have amazing conversations during our sessions.
Yeah.
And one time we started talking about how I was wondering if my kids would notice the difference because I have an open door policy when it comes to going to the bathroom. So I just made a comment in passing, like if they would notice the before or after. And that sparked this whole conversation about nudity and body image and things that we like grew up with and how our parents handled those topics. So I left this on that day. I voice memoed everything that I could remember from our conversation. And that was the basis of this episode. So that was months ago.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're finally getting a chance to do this. Do you remember what we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about all
the awkwardness.
Yeah.
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 It's going to be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can both agree that our thoughts about our weight, things that happen in our childhood, discussions about clothing and covering up your skin or nudity, food and dieting, all of those topics that have impacted how we think and feel about our bodies now as adults.
Yeah, definitely.
The things I was thinking we're going to talk about today, because I was trying to break it down. The first thing is going to be nudity and like skin exposure. So dress code almost, so to speak, like what we were allowed to display and not display. And the second thing is the role of food and a discussion around like dieting or calorie counting or how that played into how our parents and other family members dealt with that. And then the last thing is language used to describe body types, self-image, including speak about weight. And that could be directed towards us, like how our parents talked about us and our weight, or how they talked about weight in general about people and in the world. So the first thing is nudity. So let's talk about it. Can you share a little bit about your earliest experiences with how nudity or body exposure was handled in your home?
So I don't think it was really handled at all. Just wasn't talked about. But I do remember I showered with my mom. In the beginning, like we started with baths.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only girl. I was the middle child. So I had an older brother and he was 2 years older than me. And then I had a younger brother and he was 3 years younger than me. So I think my parents didn't want to it was boys and girls. And that was separate. And I know I took a bath with my younger brother because we were naked waiting for the tub and he pooped on the floor over my leg. I say it was my leg. Maybe I'm being dramatic because I was probably 2. So I remember that part.
Well, yeah.
That's memorable. So that's the last time I remember taking a bath with them. I don't remember the older one. So I don't think I did. Maybe. And then that was it with the younger one. And then when you're like at that age of, okay, now you're learning to shower and shower by yourself, you shower with your mom. Like, I remember her having a bush. Like, I didn't ask about it. We didn't talk about it. It was like, wash your body and get the heck out. There was no time for that.
Did you ever see your parents changing or?
No.
Like, how about your brothers?
Nope.
Everyone
it was very like, but I always had my own room.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we had to share hotel rooms, bathroom. That was changing. That was it. Boys, girls, nope.
You talked about going outside in a bathing suit. Can you tell that story? To give an example of how protective your parents were.
I couldn't lay out in the yard in a bathing suit because people would be looking at you. No.
Did they
not allowed.
Treat the same thing with like clothing? Like you couldn't expose?
Yeah. I wore tank tops, but it wasn't like I couldn't have spaghetti straps because you couldn't have your bra strap showing.
Oh, okay.
That's inappropriate.
Gotcha.
So like even still like
you're worried about
the
that.
bra strap is like very inappropriate.
I'm worried about the bra strap too.
Yeah, it's still a thing. Like, and I had to do the arm check. The shirt is inappropriate that I'm wearing in every single sense of the word. You could see my midriff. You can see my cleavage.
Is it too tight?
I mean, yes.
Tell about your grandma.
Oh, she just, at night, she'd be like, you have to let yourself breathe. But she also wore a nightgown, so it was gross. My mom would be like, oh, that's inappropriate. It's disgusting.
To not wear underwear to bed?
Yeah. Disgusting.
The reason I ask you to bring that up, this makes me laugh because I remember sleeping over my cousin's house when I was younger, and we were very loud, so my aunt had to come in to like yell at us a couple times to be quiet, and she would wear like a long t-shirt, and I remember like coming face to face with her bare underparts, and I always and I was wondering why. Maybe that was a common thing for that generation to
I think it is.
Go to bed without underwear on.
I read at other places too, and I never saw my grandma's.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that was.
And again, it wasn't
incident.
like inappropriate in any way. And I'm like, no, I like underwear. Thank you.
Well, I think that was my first exposure, seeing like
Someone
a bush.
Else. A bush in my face.
All these years later.
Who would have thought I'd just be seeing bushes all the time?
I know, right?
I'm just, like, my mom's bush in my face.
That's just your life now. You're just waxing them.
I'm definitely not telling her that I'm doing this.
You will not be sharing this podcast with Alyse's mother.
Like, oh my God.
It's fair.
Good thing I don't tell my parents much about my life.
Yeah, it's better that way.
Yeah.
I feel like in my house, so we didn't talk about it. We didn't like cross those boundaries. But I remember my brothers were always in their boxers. And I have a distinct memory of my older brother going outside to trim the bushes, and he was in his boxers. And my mom was like coming home or something, or saw him out the window. I can't exactly remember what. And she like went out there and yelled at him to put shorts on. But he didn't have a shirt on either. So he's shirtless, boxers, outside cutting bushes. But she like scolded him, but it was never an issue with them. Like they could walk around in their boxers. Like I never saw my parents like that. And it was a very closed door policy when it came to like changing or going to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like with me, it was more of a double standard because I was not allowed to show my stomach, like the spaghetti strap thing, the tube tops, the shorts couldn't be too short.
Yep. Fingertips.
Yeah. I remember like putting my arms to my side and like your middle finger had to be the bottom of the short otherwise. And that was like a school dress code too.
Yes. Yeah. And I went to a Catholic school on top of it. So yeah, I didn't have a double standard because my brothers had rules too. So I feel like, I think in that way my parents did well.
Well, going to church was the worst. It's funny because I wasn't allowed to expose my shoulders, not even like a thick strap.
No, at church?
Top. Yeah, like no shoulder exposure whatsoever. Obviously, no shorts ever.
Yes.
I could wear dresses, but they had to be like pretty much to the knee. And it's funny because now we go to church and it's warm out and I have even like, you know, a thick strap shirt on. I always put a sweater on and my husband's like, why are you so caught up on covering your shoulders in church? I'm like, I just can't help it. But church was like a very big point of contention for us.
Yeah.
As far as like dressing.
I don't remember having fights about church. Probably blocked it all out. I don't know. Maybe I blocked it out.
But to this day, I cannot like go into church without my shoulders covered. And obviously,
I am weird.
It's not a big deal at all. But like you said about the bra strap, like I'm very weird about because that was always like trashy.
Yes, it still feels trashy.
Yeah. But I remember there being like a big conversation around my track pants, my very cool track pants that I saved up my money to buy that said juicy on the butt.
Oh, yep.
I was so excited. They were so popular. They were so expensive. And I got mine from the outlet mall. And then apparently my dad had a conversation with my mom about it because he never like confronted us about anything. He always talked to her about it and then she had to tell us. So he was not a fan of me having the word juicy on my butt because then people were going to read my butt and I was just attracting attention to my rear end.
Yes, yeah.
So from then on, if there was any chance that I was going to see my father, I could not wear the juicy pants. And I don't like think my mom cared much about it, to be honest, but
my parents united front, so I was not allowed to have those.
Oh, you weren't allowed to have them at all? So same thing?
Yep.
Because of the juicy on the butt?
I remember we were on a family vacation, and I got the Spice Girls, just the tape. So I don't know how many songs it had on it. And my dad saw the girls on the cover, and he was so offended by the way they were dressed. And he was like, that is inappropriate. They're sexualizing themselves. He was so mad. But I was so excited to get that tape.
I was going to say, did he take like the sleeve out? I mean, like, I'm just going to...
I don't think so, but I think they just tried to use that as an example of like how inappropriate showing your body like that. I think that's how they tried to like make examples out of women to me. I think that's how they did that stuff.
That's funny.
My brothers would tell me I'm dramatic.
Yeah, I'm told that a lot too.
I'm like, you don't really understand.
I was going to say, it's not being dramatic. It's just you're processing all these things. Like you were put in a box and you're just processing it. And
you weren't there. Like you didn't have the same conversations.
Right. You don't know what it feels like to be that.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like there was a double standard because I was the girl. So the way that I dressed mattered a lot more than how my brothers, because I also had two brothers, how they dressed.
Yeah. It didn't matter for them.
It didn't matter as much.
They weren't worried about you being sexualized, possibly kidnapped, raped, anything. They didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Well, I will say, because I like to do research, so I'll be sprinkling in some of that throughout our conversation here. Okay. But when it comes to the debate about wearing more revealing clothing and whether or not you should allow your child to wear more revealing clothing, Reddit has a really strong opinion, as usual. I read a few threads that were touting the importance of, trusting your child and allowing them to express themselves and how important that is. And one poster said that imposing your beliefs and opinions on your teen children demolishes trust, and it could be seen as controlling and damaging. So I have a lot of stuff on that we're going to get into later, but I want to bring it back to the whole conversation that sparked this episode. And that was, at what age should you stop going to the bathroom in front of your kids or changing in front of your kids? And I guess it's funny because they were very strict about it. And I didn't even realize until I started thinking about it how like free my household is with all of that. Like I never thought twice about it. I always leave the door open when I go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Every morning, like we're getting ready and I'm changing my clothes after I change the kids and they're in and out of my bedroom and doing other stuff. And like, I just never think twice about it.
See, we were closed doors, so I don't know.
And I don't know if I do this because it was that way. Or
right, you're like I want to do it totally opposite.
Because I do feel too, that, and we're not going to talk about this because it's just going to go down a rabbit hole, but like it leads to a whole thing about, sexuality and, feeling ashamed about thinking certain things and like the whole, again, Catholic guilt about a lot of things. And so like that's like a whole other rabbit hole. But I think maybe that's why I'm leaning in this direction of just being very like open. And I don't want my kids to feel, ashamed about their bodies or anything. And I think that starts at a young age.
Yeah.
I was wondering, again, at what age you stop. So I looked it up. And most things I read indicated that there's not really a hard and fast rule. And it's really up to the parent and the children and like how they feel about things. Obviously, if they're showing signs of discomfort or they start asking for privacy or want, modesty, then you should start considering stopping that. But somewhere between ages 4 and 8 is when most children begin to develop a sense of privacy and body awareness. And this modesty about their bodies could correspond with discomfort of seeing their parents' naked bodies. So that's, again, it's really more up to the child and the parent. Like I personally don't feel uncomfortable. My kids are still fairly young. So I imagine at some point I would stop. But it says, here's some tips if you're wondering, your situation. Observe your child's cues. So if they start covering up themselves or like covering their eyes or like making comments about you being naked or like, ew, mommy's naked, obviously, maybe start to change the behavior. And then respect their boundaries. So again, if they ask for privacy while changing, make sure you always give it. I know sometimes my daughter asks for privacy while she's pooping. She always gets it.
Like, you have it.
Yeah, that's all you. And then just talking about it openly. So say something like, hey, I was going to change. Do you want to leave the room for a minute, or is it okay if I do it here and just follow their cues? So if you're wondering if you should stop bathing your kids together, it's similar guidance to the previous issue based on age and sex. For children of opposite sexes, most parents choose to separate bath times around ages 4 or 5 to teach proper body boundaries. It's a mouthful, body boundaries. But personal preference and maturity also factor in. So it could be as old as 10 years, which that seems kind of old to me.
That does seem.
And then they talk about puberty. So like if you're nearing puberty, obviously separate the children. And I know puberty comes younger and younger these days. So I would say 10 is probably,
that
you want to do it before
definitely.
10. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They also say that shared bath time could be a fun bonding experience. So unless your children have expressed a desire to stop bathing with their siblings or are well into puberty, then there's no inherent risk of bathing your children together. The other thing I read is that some experts say that these situations that deal with nudity or privacy are excellent opportunities to teach children about consent and boundaries. So teaching your child the correct term for their anatomical parts and then learning how to advocate or identify their needs, put up boundaries and get their privacy when they want it. Those are all skills that we want to make sure that our children have because they're going to be valuable later on in life.
Yeah, we just didn't talk about it.
We didn't talk about that either. Okay, so that is the nudity talk. I think we beat that to death. Next, let's talk about food. What are your experiences with how food was handled, dieting, calorie counting, weight? Like, how were those things handled in your house?
Really, it wasn't an issue. My favorite foods were always something chocolate. I definitely have more of a sweet tooth.
Mm-hmm.
I would always rather have something sweet than healthy. We talked about we didn't have a scale in the house. We didn't have...
Yeah, that's interesting.
My mom cooked dinner every night. She could make anything. Like if you went into their fridge right now, you could find anything. So it was pretty much always healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Salads almost every night.
Oh,
I don't love salad, but we would have snacks. Of course, in my mind, remembering, I'm like, oh, there was never snacks in the house. But the problem for us, it was cereal. I always wanted, Cocoa Puffs or something sweet. And then I had 2 brothers. I swear we never had enough.
You fought to the death.
Yes. And it was like, so you ate as much as you could because otherwise it wasn't going to be there. Because my brother would hold the bowl down and fill the milk because he filled it up so much. So I would eat as much as I possibly could. And like if my mom brought home, like my favorite thing was Nutty bars. So like you ate as many as you could till you're like sick because otherwise that's it.
Yeah.
And it's not like my mom didn't buy it, but she didn't buy a lot of it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this earlier about me and my snacks. I remember going to a friend's house and 4 girls. So they had this cupboard in the kitchen and it was just Little Debbie's, all of them, every single. And I'd be like,
a dream.
We're only having one. I just wanted to sit in the kitchen and eat all of the snacks. I wanted to raid the cupboard because if that were at my house, I would never stop.
Mm-hmm. How do you handle snacks now, like in your house?
Almost the same.
You buy them and then you eat the whole box?
Yes.
Right away?
Or I hide it. I have to hide it from myself. I have to hide it from my brothers.
Still competing. For
like you have to not like I can't go buy more.
Yeah.
But in my head, I have to eat it now. I just did it. I did it after Christmas. We went to Mally's in Ohio, which is our favorite chocolate. And my brother, I'm like, he's going to eat it all if I don't. So I started shoving it down my throat.
That's interesting.
I'm only going to get it the next time I go to Ohio.
Yeah.
So it's still like a mental, I have to eat it all.
Did you pick up cues from your mom about how she handled her own weight or self-image?
The only thing she didn't like about herself, for the most part, was that she had big legs. But my mom was like 120 pounds. So she was always very, very skinny. I don't remember her saying that, like not in front of me. If she ever said that out loud, she never said it in front of me. She never talked about how she felt about herself. And my dad didn't either. I probably don't remember her saying anything about maybe looking back at old photos and going, and I hated my legs, maybe in my 20s. And I don't remember her saying a single negative thing about even my body, probably until I was in my 20s. And maybe that's when she started. It was when I started wearing those, LuLaRoe leggings that hold nothing in.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, okay.
So she made comments?
That was the first comment I ever remember her saying about my body. When I was probably in my mid to late 20s, she didn't talk about her weight. And I think, like I said, with the Spice Girls and how they dressed, I think that's how they handled talking negatively about women that dress like that. Like, you shouldn't dress like that.
Yeah,
like,
body
that's
image.
Terrible. I get where they were coming from. And back then it was more my dad, where now it's my mom. My dad doesn't say anything.
Interesting. Well, I was thinking about food because I think this is my biggest problem or maybe unresolved issue. We're an Italian family. Every gathering revolved around food and all of the multiple courses for the holidays. And there was always like a pasta course on top of like whatever protein and all the side dishes. And then dessert. Every meal had dessert. I have a major sweet tooth too. And I feel like my dinner meal is not complete until I have something sweet because I crave it.
I'm the exact same way. My dad knew how to like stop himself. He has
self-control.
He has self-control. I don't have that.
I don't either.
Sometimes I do, and I'm working on that still, but it's so hard.
Well, I think about the times that I've lost weight, like before my wedding and then after having children. Like I always had these goals to get to, but I was, taking calorie counting to an extreme. Like even though I was successful, I never lost weight in a healthy way. And that's why like I was never able to keep it off and it would come back. So I feel like my relationship with food is definitely tortured almost because I will go through times where I'm, eating 1,200 or less calories a day and like starving myself to get the weight off. And then there's times when I'm like eating an entire box of snacks because I can't stop myself.
Yeah.
And these are like things I would never want my children to emulate. So I really need to figure out how to get to a weight that I'm comfortable in a healthy way that you can sustain with diet and exercise. And I truly still do not feel comfortable in my skin. I don't think I ever have. I always feel like, I could lose 10 or 20 pounds and then I'll be happy. And that's just never the case.
I know. I worked at, it was like a local like Curves. It was something like that. I would go to the gym and then I'd go to the store and go buy a thing of Pillsbury dough and I'd go eat that or go eat donuts. Well, now it's catching up to me because I never learned a healthy, how to stop myself. I remember even in high school, I remember thinking, I got like, my knees are thick. Like my knees are weird or weird things. I don't know. I thought my legs were fat.
I know. I had a real problem with like my bottom half. Yeah. And like I was embarrassed to take gym because everyone would be in shorts and like they had these little tiny thighs and like my thighs were like twice the size of them. But looking back at pictures, we're rail thin.
Yeah. I remember.
So where does that come from? Like why in our heads do we think we're fat when we're not?
I don't know. I think my parents did pretty well.
I think mine did well too. So how do you make sure that your children have a healthy relationship with food? So we can like wrap up the food bit because there is like a bit more I want to get to on the body image stuff. Avoid labeling foods as good or bad. Just teach everything in moderation. And that's something that like I think, I learned through Noom, that one diet app or it's not really a diet app, wellness app.
Yes.
But that was the same thing. Like don't say, chips are bad and broccoli's good. It's like, no, you can eat everything. It's just a matter of moderation. So you want to involve your kids in meal prep and encourage them to participate in the cooking and the planning of the meals. And that, builds a sense of ownership and then positive association with food. Avoid food as a reward or a punishment. This can create very unhealthy emotional ties to food. Like if you finish your meal, then you can get dessert type of thing. Create consistent mealtime habits. So regular meal and snack times are going to help children learn their hunger and fullness cues naturally. So you're not overeating at one time and not eating enough at another time of day. If it's consistent and they can expect when they're going to have breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, and then be a positive role model. Children emulate their parents' attitudes towards everything. So demonstrating healthy, flexible eating habits and avoiding negative self-talk about food or weight. So when I was growing up, we always had to clean our plate.
Yes.
And I have always said with my kids, I don't want to make them clean their plate because I have a very strong memory of being at my dining room table and everybody else was done and had been done for a long time. And I was still sitting there. It was somewhere between the ages of 5 and 10. I'm not really sure. And I'm pretty sure it was broccoli on my plate that I had to finish. And I just remember plugging my nose and chasing it down with milk and gagging over it. But I had to finish my plate of food before I could leave. And I've even heard my niece and nephew at one point refer to it as a happy plate. I made a happy plate. It's all cleaned off. I ate everything.
Oh.
I don't know. My husband and I are coming to an agreement because the first thing is I think he puts too much food on the kids' plates. And then he tells them that they have to finish it. And I'm always no, if they're full, give them a minute, let their brain catch up to their stomach and see if they're full. And if they're full, they don't have to eat the rest.
Yeah.
And experts say that if you force your kid to eat all of their food, it could actually lead to unhealthy eating habits because you're teaching them to ignore their body's hunger cues. And then it could recreate a negative relationship with food. So they could be less likely to eat nutritious foods in the future. If you're forcing them to eat them, they might develop an aversion to that food. And it's funny because I detest most vegetables, except the vegetables that I love, I was not introduced to until I was an adult. So Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, I absolutely love. We never had those. But carrots, peas, broccoli, I hate all that stuff. So
I used to eat the tops of broccoli, and my brother, the older one, ate the bottom of broccoli. We literally switched them.
I think the bottoms are so gross. And even with the kids, my husband puts on these big, huge, flower things of broccoli, and it's all the big bushy top and then the big long, and I cut the bottoms off, and I'm you guys don't have to eat that. It's disgusting.
Yeah. We had to, we could only drink milk with dinner. And yes, we had to finish our plates. Yeah. So then we'll be at dinner and I'm I have to finish my plate or I'm wasting food. And now I'm oh, just waste it. I have to mentally tell myself, you're stuffed.
Yeah, it's better that way.
I agree with that.
Pediatrician Susan Wolford says that requiring children to eat everything on their plate or withholding dessert unless all other foods are eaten can lead to overconsumption, especially if portion sizes are already too large for the child's age, which is hard sometimes because kids are growing so quickly and I never know how much we're supposed to be giving them or how much is going to fill them up or not. Yeah. She recommends the approach that parents provide and the child decides. So you just make sure that there's healthy options available and then they are going to eat what they want to eat. And children are never going to starve. They will eat food before they let themselves starve. So that's not really a concern. All right. So back to the self-image and weight stuff. You were talking about how your parents never said anything negative to you or addressed your weight or their own for that matter.
Yeah.
So my parents never either. I don't ever remember my parents saying anything about weight or dieting or anything. Do you have good self-esteem now?
I think that I do. And especially talking to so many other girls, I have a friend that is so negative about her body that I want to shake her. And I'm don't talk about yourself like that. And I try and spin it or, oh my God, I have such wide hips. Who doesn't want bigger hips? Who wants a stick?
Yeah, right. Curves are in.
Yeah, exactly. Thank God. Actually, I do remember my grandma, even my dad's mom saying stuff about her body. She had a big butt. I'm listen, no matter what size I am, I'll probably have a big butt. And now I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah.
Because I have my mom's butt wide and then I have my grandma's butt shelf. I kind of wish I had more of it, but she was short. Then she had this shelf from her back to her knees. I mean, this thing was huge. I wish it was more like that, but she hated it.
Yeah.
Because she came from a time that it was not okay.
Yeah. Even I think growing up, you mentioned the Spice Girls, I was reflecting on, because I had this horrible self-body image. And I'm because my parents never talked negatively about it. Where did my negative self-image come from? Or why did I always think I was so fat? But you look at Christina Aguilera, the Spice Girls, Britney Spears, like what was happening when we were growing up.
They all were sticks.
Yeah, and they were always like naked from
Yes.
like under their boobs, like down to their hips. And it was just
And
like this
yes,
tiny little
mini skirts.
Yeah, completely. And like all the magazines. Did you read 17 and Cosmo and all that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had to sneak it though, I think.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure I wasn't allowed to have that stuff.
That is so funny because I am pretty sure I had a subscription to Cosmo when I was in high school,
Really?
delivered to my house. And I remember my dad intercepted it
Oh, no.
at one point or saw it on the table or something. And it was like 10 ways to please your man in bed or something ridiculous, as it always was.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
again, he spoke to my mom because never to me directly. And I'm pretty sure, like I could be remembering this wrong, and I'm sure I will be corrected if I was, but I'm pretty sure my mom was just like, okay, let's just make sure he doesn't see it. So she's like, here you go. Like,
See, I think I just avoided that whole entire situation. I think I was like, I'm not allowed to have that. I probably didn't want to have the conversation.
Yeah.
I probably had so many of the talks. That's inappropriate. This is inappropriate. Like, I remember going to Deb and buying myself a thong with stars on it and hiding it in a basket and like hand washing it when I wanted to wear. Like, I think I had one thong.
That's hilarious.
So couldn't have that. I think I just hid everything. Like, I've learned to like hide everything about my life. I know that there are definitely times there's certain things that I'm like, I can't wear that. That's not for me.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I think over time, I have other friends that are like, oh my God, if I had your body, I'd be wearing this or I'd be naked all the time. Or, you know, so I think just actually listening to when people say things and taking it at face value, it's truly a compliment and like enjoying it.
Yeah. I'm really working on that. And I think like having kids too really messes you up because everything moves. Like nothing is the same.
Yeah.
I will never look how I looked before. And I'm just like, it's years later and I'm trying to like come to terms with it. I'm trying to like feel pretty in my skin, knowing that it's this different person now.
Yeah.
And be confident. And again, like, I don't know, just show my kids that
it's hard. It's so hard.
you are who you are. And that's amazing.
Yes.
But I do question myself, like even if I wear a dress to a wedding and I'm like, oh, it's too tight. And then I'll say to my husband, like, I can't wear this. It's too tight. It shows too much, right? And he's like, what are you talking about?
I know. I think
like, it's literally in my head.
I think it's in our head. I don't know why. I wish we didn't do that. But sometimes my brother will do the same thing. And I'm like, why are you talking like that? I'm like, stop it.
I don't want to say that men don't have similar,
yes,
you know, self-deprecation and like poor body image and everything. Like that's definitely true. I just think that it's worse.
It is.
For
it's
women.
Way worse for women.
And like you say, like just being sexualized. So I'm going to roll into the next part. What is the right thing to do when you're raising children? Like how do you make sure that you're raising children to be confident in their skin, you know, like when we're struggling, and how to protect them and avoid sexualizing them and all of that, and still letting them, you know, explore their own creativity or explore their own individuality through their clothing. Do you let your children dress however they want? So experts say that older kids, we're talking like middle and high school, choosing a wardrobe is one of the first opportunities that they have to develop their own personal style. And it's super personal and like self-expressive. And it could mean a whole lot more than just clothes. So how one dresses has the potential to be a massive factor, especially when they're navigating the chaotic social environment that is middle and high school. So it's important to allow some freedom and support them. But then you're like wondering, where's the line? I wasn't allowed to show my belly. So like, should we let our kids show their belly? We want them to feel comfortable and express themselves. And I don't want them to feel ashamed of their bodies, you know? So like I always said, I would kill my daughter before she walked out the house and certain things. But I don't think I feel that way anymore.
That would be so hard. I'm kind of glad I don't have a daughter.
Yeah.
To like worry about that. Where I feel like I know what my parents were doing and it was protecting.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point, it's also like body shaming.
Yeah.
Because I shouldn't feel bad about myself. I'm curvy and I have a great body for the most part.
Yes.
But it shouldn't be that I shouldn't be allowed to wear a bathing suit in my own yard. It should be that I'll kill that weird neighbor if he looks at you wrong.
Yeah.
Not you shouldn't wear it because there's a weird neighbor that might look at you wrong. That's inappropriate for him, not for me.
Yeah. And that's that question. Okay. As far as the argument that if a woman dresses in revealing clothing, she's more likely to be objectified or open to unwanted advances from men, or even more susceptible to like sexual harassment or assault. This thought process reinforces harmful stereotypes that are shifting responsibility away from the perpetrators. So it's victim blaming in these situations. Assaults only happen because an assaulter committed an assault. Experiences and research show that clothing does not make someone more likely to experience sexual violence, and people get assaulted whether they're wearing bikinis or sweatpants and hoodies. Yeah. The onus shouldn't be put on the person who's expressing themselves for the bad behavior of a predator.
Yeah.
So sexual violence, it would still exist no matter what. Like even if everybody was wearing something unflattering or hoodies and sweatpants again, like it's not going away because of how people are being dressed.
No.
So just one final thought on clothing and children. What our children want to wear may go outside of what is considered to us, standard gendered clothing, or pushing the lines of decency or showing too much skin, or even like being too casual for a particular situation, like wearing sweatpants or pajamas to a family function or church or something like that. It's important to remember that it might not be comfortable for us as parents. Questioning our children or even like slinging negative comments or any of that, it will only create distance and hurt feelings, and that's going to strain relationships. Mm-hmm. So just trying to keep an open mind. And of course, there's going to be a line, and you'll know it when you're there, I feel like, where you're going to have to step in and do it in a kind way, using kind words and not body shaming, but
encouraging.
Yes. Yeah. Being positive. So for my final thought for the episode, I want to share one more thing. I found a study conducted by the City University of New York, and this study spanned 25 years and examined how parents influence their children's perception of dress and sex. So the three main findings were that parental modeling and discussions shape children's attitudes toward appearance and its connection to self-worth. So it starts with the parents. Overemphasis on appearance can perpetuate societal beauty norms and pressures. And I think that includes, too, overemphasis on what you're wearing and how modest you're being.
Mm-hmm.
And then parent-child communication about dress and sexuality can influence body image, self-perception, and confidence, both positively and negatively. There was not a whole lot of parent-child communication about sex in my household. I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
I know.
So my takeaway as a parent is that modeling my behavior is a big deal for how my kids are going to perceive these things going forward. Our children are always watching us, and it stands to reason that if we're comfortable in our own skin and we're showing that to our children, how to be comfortable and embrace ourselves, then they'll be able to do the same thing. That's something I'm still struggling with. Like I mentioned, like my body is completely different since before I had kids, and I'm working on it. And it'll take time, but I want to be that good example for my kids. So that is a priority. And the last thing I just want to mention, about raising kids with self-confidence, because this was something else I was wondering about. We all think our kids are the most beautiful kids in the world. So like I find myself, gushing over my little ones all the time, or we'll be cuddling and I'm like, oh, you're so beautiful. Or my son will get dressed for like a function or something and he'll have on his button down. I'm like, oh, you're so handsome. And I can't help myself from like saying those things, but this is another one of those things that seems harmless enough, but it's putting way too much emphasis on like physical beauty. So I found an article about 25 compliments you can give a child that are not based on physical appearance that are going to help with self-esteem and self-worth. So I'm going to include that in the show notes so that you can see the whole list, but some things from the list and then some things that I'm trying to bring in to my day-to-day to say to my kids instead of like, you're so pretty, because of course they are, is, you're so smart. You have the best laugh, or you give the best hugs. My daughter gives the best hugs. She really does. Or you're such a great friend, or you work so hard on that. I'm so proud of you. That kind of stuff.
Oh, see? Never would have thought about that.
Because I overthink everything.
Those are good things to say.
Yeah, so I'm trying my hardest not to focus on physical appearance.
Well, it's from, what's the movie? The Help.
I never saw that one.
Oh, the one nanny, she's like, you is kind, you is smart, you is important. I say that to my dog.
Yeah. No, it's important.
When he's good.
Yeah. So that's my focus, my takeaway. And I do have one more article that I'm just going to throw in the show notes. I'm not going to share here, but it's again about how to raise confident kids and like build that self-esteem. So I think that's it. Is there anything else you want to add?
Oh, I could go on about this forever and ever.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for having this discussion. And as always, thank you for our chats over my Brazilian waxes. And maybe we will get another episode out of that.
Yeah. See what comes up next.
Exactly. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, I am on TikTok and TikTok has survived. So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Momming as a Millennial. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend or on social. You can find more from me at contemplativemama.com. Until next time.